Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habita fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuing on in our study of the book An-Nushuz, the book describing marital discord, some of the reasons for spousal disharmony, reasons for divorce and tension within the marital bond. We left off Ahabitafillah in our discussion by referencing the difference between An-Nushuz and Al-A'rad, meaning the difference between marital discord and complete shunning and avoidance, meaning when a husband or a wife, they completely shun one another. And that shows when the marriage has broken down, to really its lowest level. Wallahu musta'an. An-Nushuz is wherein either spouse does not fulfill what Allah has obligated upon them of their spouse's rights and obligations, and a dislike to live and behave properly with one another. So that's nushuz. The husband's committing of nushuz involves his misbehavior and misconduct to his wife by harming her, beating her, transgressing against her rights, boycotting her, and so forth. And we talked about this in detail prior to this. However, the concept of nushuz is not to be confused with another closely related concept, which is I'rad. I'rad has been defined as where the husband hardly speaks to his wife or does not accompany or sit with her or be friendly with her, and he turns away from her. So this is the full breakdown. Nushuz, the husband, from the point of the husband, is when the husband is not fulfilling the rights of his wife. He's not giving her those rights and being maybe kind and gentle with her. But I'rad is taking it in effect to another level where there's like total disregard of her. There's a total disregard. And the example was given where the husband hardly speaks to his wife or does not accompany or sit with her or be friendly with her, and he turns away from her. So this is the total denial and turning away from the wife. It is also said that I'rad is where the husband leaves the wife hanging. She is neither truly his wife in essence, nor is she divorced. And this is also, as we mentioned, this is the total breakdown when there is no longer between the husband and wife, no longer is there that spousal interaction and that spousal relationship. Their husband at this stage, the marriage, the relationship has broken down probably to the lowest level, because when you have nushuz, this is maybe a denial and a negation of the rights. Maybe there's abuse, which is also severe and wicked. However, this is another level. This is where it's like a total disregard, as if she's neither married nor is she divorced, and they just are still maybe in the same house or whatever the case may be. I'rad has been mentioned with the conjunction or implying that is different from nushuz in the following verse of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if a woman fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part, there is no sin for them both if they make terms of peace between themselves, and making peace is better. Al-Islah wa sulh khair. Therefore, one must distinguish between An-Nushuz and I'rad in both their meanings and their rulings. An-Nushuz is more general, more comprehensive than I'rad. It includes every act of misconduct and misbehavior from the spouses, meaning husband and wife, and every act of disobedience and raising of one party over the other, or disinclination or deviance, and so forth. It includes all the aspects that were stated earlier in the definition of An-Nushuz, and we talked about that prior. As for Al-I'rad, It is less in scope than the nushuz. It is where the husband shuns and avoids his wife with his face, his person, and wealth, and when he rarely speaks to her or will sit in silence with her, and so forth. And so that's, again, as we mentioned, that's when you see the total breakdown. And when a marriage has reached that stage beyond the shoes, because there's going to be shortcomings in one another's rights and so forth. But when a marriage breaks down all the way, and there is i'rad, meaning the husband no longer even regards the wife almost as his spouse, or even in a human way sometimes, or perhaps even vice versa, this is a total breakdown. This is at the last stage of a marriage. As for al-i'rad, it is less in scope than the nushuz, is where the husband shuns and avoids his wife. Therefore, a nushuz is more general and more comprehensive than al-i'rad. In Tafsir al-Manar, it states, it is apparent that a nushuz is more general and incorporates all acts of disobedience that are caused by raising one above the other and arrogance. That is with respect to its meaning. Now the discussion turns to the ruling of each. A nushuz is forbidden according to the unanimous consensus of the scholars, meaning there's ijma'. This is true regardless of it is by a statement, action, or both. This is also true regardless if it is done by the woman, by the man, or by both of them. Some of the scholars consider it to be one of the great sins, because nushuz, this is disobedience. This affects the spousal rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the spouses. So nushuz is it's a type of disobedience, and it's sinfulness, as the scholars mention. As for al-i'rad, it is less harmful and less of a sin than a nushuz. This is actually surprising. It states in Al-Bahr al-Muhit and other books of Quranic explanation that al-i'rad is something lighter than a nushuz. Furthermore, a nushuz is a sensory attribute that is perceivable, that demonstrates what is in the soul of the person, such as transgressing against one's wife by hitting her, cutting off her maintenance, not having intercourse with her, having foul conduct towards her, and so forth. This is different from al-i'rad. Al-i'rad is also a sensory attribute, but it is not manifested and cannot be noticed by anyone, although it leads to hatred, dislike, and diffidence. Not speaking much or sitting with one's wife or being friendly towards her is something that is not that noticeable, although it is a sensory or physical act. That is, it may be something not noticed or perceived as long as the husband is fulfilling his rights and obligation towards his wife, such as her maintenance, kind conduct towards her, and not transgressing against her and harming her. Furthermore, although al-nushuz can be from the wife, from the husband, or from both, al-i'rad is only done by the husband. Allah has not made any mention of i'rad from the wife, although he has mentioned a nushuz on the part of the wife. So this is very important from the Shari'i perspective. I was incorrect in my definition, in my understanding of i'rad, because we usually look at i'rad, from our perspective, that when a marriage or a relationship breaks down and there is no longer even respect, or and there's that almost like a type, there's that inner hatred or what have you, and it's manifested in that way, that's a breakdown. But however, the Sheikh is mentioning here that in the Shari'i, this concept of i'rad is coming from the perspective of the husband, although we know women can, the nusus mention from the husband. So that's why the Sheikh is saying that. But women can obviously also ignore their husbands and the rights of their husbands, and it can make a hostile environment for the husbands. So in general, they are both very dangerous, but as the Sheikh mentions, that the nushuz is more serious in relation to the hukum. So then he goes on, he mentions the types or cases of a nushuz. He says there are different cases of nushuz as Allah has made it clear in his book. The first case is where the nushuz is committed by the wife. This case and resolution have been mentioned in the Quran. As to those women on whose part you see ill conduct, admonish them first, next refuse to share their beds, last beat them lightly, but if they return to obedience, seek not against them any means of annoyance. The second case is nushuz on the part of the husband. This case and its resolution has also been mentioned in the Quran. If a woman fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part, there is no sin for them both if they make terms of peace between them, and making peace is better. As-sulh al-khair. As-sulh khair. The third case is where nushuz is committed by both the husband and the wife. This is also mentioned in the Quran as well, that Allah Ta'ala says, if you fear a breach or a breach between them twain, the husband and wife, appoint two arbitrators, one from his family and the other from hers. If they both wish for peace, Allah will cause their reconciliation. So it shows us that the Shari'i prescription, when there is that breakdown, when there is that marital discord and the lapse of rights, the woman's not wanting to give the husband his rights as far as coming to bed, the husband is maybe denying some of her financial rights, or having some sort of abusive behavior towards her, or what have you. The Shar', as Allah Ta'ala mentions, prescribes that they then appoint arbitrators, someone who to come between them in order to bring about that sulh, to bring about that reconciliation, to bring about that matrimonial harmony that needs to be in the marriage. That you need the comfort and the refuge in your home. And when the home is in turmoil, more than likely the rest of the life can be unstable and in chaos. So it's very important. The Sharia prescription is to appoint parties. Maybe that could be from the parents, from both parents, or someone that the people feel that they trust and respect, that can come and kind of arbitrate and deal with those problems. So nushuz on the part of the wife could be through speech alone, or it could be by speech and action together. And there are some examples the Sheikh mentions. He says, for example, if it were customary for the wife to have polite speech and respond quickly to her husband's call, and then she changes and speaks to him in an ill fashion, and he calls her, but she does not respond, or she responds but slowly or with showing disdain, meaning she may still respond to the husband, but you can see that she hates it. You can see that it's a task upon her, that she's not feeling it. She's not really doing it because she loves her husband, or she wants to be obedient necessarily, or that she wants good, but it's a resistance. It's grudgingly. And that can be the indication of nushuz. For example, she may raise her voice at him, or she speaks to a male that she is not related to, or talks to one over the phone or through letters for a purpose that is not sanctioned by the Sharia. The woman may proceed to abuse, curse, revile, and slander her husband, or insult him by some physical or mental shortcoming that he may have. So this also happens, as I'm sure many of us are aware, that often a woman, if she is being vindictive and spiteful, that she will look for ways to hurt and harm the husband. She may prey on his shortcomings. He may have shortcomings, and she might exploit them. She may announce them. sometimes even publicly, or taking it outside of the home. All of this is ghayr mashru'. This is all muharram. But however, this is kind of the weaponizing of the shortcomings of someone. And this happens, especially when there's spite and there's this nushuz, there's this dislike, and there's a breakdown. That's that marital discord. And this is kind of one of the manifestations of it. So she may speak to him harshly about his relatives and family without a due cause, even bringing up your family is like this, your mother is like this, your grandmother's like this, you are like this, your aunts and uncles, they're like this and they're intrusive. So it can really go out of proportion when those things are not necessary to perhaps even speak about, unless, of course, it is not due to nushuz and it's actually real issues that are harming the marriage. For example, as I know in many traditional societies, and you'll have this kind of intervention from the in-laws. You'll have the relatives, the aunts, the uncles, and maybe they all even live together in some households. And this can be very, cause a lot of tension. And with that tension of living with numerous people, numerous elders that are supervising, that are advising, that are in your business, this can cause a great, this can be a source of nushuz. This can cause nushuz, and this can cause tension. And there are times when it will be legitimate. The woman, maybe if the woman is living in the in-laws, her in-laws' home, well, she has a right to her own home as a Muslimah. She has that right as a married woman to have her own home if they're able to do so. And if the husband is bringing her home with all his elders and so forth, and some of them are maybe not religious, some of them are not, maybe not gentle and kind and respectful, or they could be good people, but they just get on the nerves of the wife and they're harmful to her. She has a legitimate right to express that to her husband, say, hey, I need my own place. We need our own space. We need to be out of this situation. So that is not considered nushuz. So we need to distinguish that. So when it comes to the nushuz, she speaks harshly about his relatives and family without due cause. And that's what the sheikh said, without due cause, meaning without unjustly, okay, like as a backbiting and just speaking ill to hurt him or hurt his family or whatever. Or perhaps the wife accuses her husband by concocted speech and lies to expose or harm him. So this happens too. There are how many case scenarios where there are women out of their vindictiveness, meaning those women that have that vindictive behavior, they want to bring their husband down, even going to the court systems to try to destroy the honor of the husband, to embarrass the husband, to humiliate the husband, and sometimes get monetary compensation from the husband. These are real case scenarios. It happens around the world, unfortunately, in Muslim societies and communities. So that is a nushuz, and that is an example of when the woman is transgressing bounds. If she's lying in order to tarnish the image of the individual, of her husband, for whatever reason that's causing that. She wants to harm and expose him. Or if she asks him for divorce and calls for it wrongly, or she seeks for khula and so forth, the nullification of the marriage from the woman's side. Or she does not fulfill his oaths if he makes such an oath. If she does any of these, she is considered to be committing nushuz. Also, nushuz can be by deed, and it has various examples that the sheikh gives. He says this category would include when the woman refuses her husband when he calls her to bed. She frowns in his face. She refuses to let him touch her or kiss her, and this is the sheikh's language. She closes and locks the door on him, or she comes to him lazily and grudgingly and so forth. And even including that, maybe she comes, but she doesn't even want to beautify herself. She doesn't want to make her bill because she doesn't really want to be there. So this can also be a physical form of manifestation of nushuz. Also included in this category is the woman leaving the house without her husband's permission, even if it is to visit her parents, or if she flees from her house without any legal right or cause that will permit her to do so. Another example is her refusal to travel with him, or she may betray him with respect to her person or his wealth, or she uncovers part of her body that must be covered, so she's lazy in her hijab. There are women like this. Some women, may Allah guide us in them, as a part of their physical nushuz, maybe they married a husband and they were wearing niqab and they were doing this. So then when they become weak in iman and also want to illustrate, to get back at the husband and stuff, some of them, they actually begin to uncover, not just taking off the niqab, but showing her hair. Some going, just taking off the hijab. It just depends on the level of the iman of the woman and her, and her deen in general. So some of the women, they become very lackadaisical in their hijab and in their responsibilities, and those are responsibilities they have to cover for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and cover their honor. But it's a way for them to get back at the husbands. Or she laughs with another male that she is not related to, or has soft speech with such a male, or she goes out in the streets not wearing the proper clothing and displaying her beauty and so forth. So these are some, also, as we said, these are kind of more physical ways of being vindictive towards the husband. It also includes when the wife does not beautify or perfume herself for her husband when he is desirous of that. So if the husband likes a certain thing, but the wife, she's like, nah, I'm not doing that. You either are going to enjoy what I have or forget it. I don't want to wear that. I don't want to put that perfume on. I don't want to, if it's a husband that likes makeup or whatever, he likes a certain thing. She knows this, but out of Nashu, she's like, hey, you should be thankful I'm giving you what you desire anyway, as if she's just doing him a favor instead of fulfilling a duty. So this is also a type of Nashuz. It also includes her not fulfilling one of the rights of Allah upon her, such as if she abandons the prayer, she does not perform complete bathing after becoming sexually impure, or she does not fast the month of Ramadan. In all of these cases, she is considered disobedient and committing nushuz. The wife may possibly combine together acts of nushuz by speech as well as in deed and be considered as committing nushuz of both types. So that's the nushuz, that discord, that disharmony, and that vindictiveness from the perspective, the actions of the woman, from the actions and the speech and behavior of a disobedient wife that does not want unity in her marriage. Then we move to nushuz on part of the husband. Nushuz on the part of the husband. So similarly, nushuz could be committed by the husband in either speech or action, or both of them combined. So also, as we mentioned, the husband can be the perpetrator of the nushuz, this disobedience, this discord and disunity. Nushuz by speech and its various manifestations. This would include the following cases: where he boycotts his wife and does not speak to her, or he speaks to her only with crude speech and cold words. So this is something we have to be aware of, that sometimes some of the men are only rough with their wives. They only speak harsh with them. There's never gentleness. There's never joking. There's never enjoying anything. It becomes as if he's in the military, and he is in the military with her being the soldiers under his command, and there's only harshness, only roughness. And we know generally from the nature of women, almost we can say that this is a natural disposition of most women, is that they like gentleness, they like kindness, they like to be given gifts, they like to be respected. Everyone likes to be respected. So this is very important to consider on how to speak to the spouse. And again, we're talking about from the men's, the actions of the men and the speech of men. So, or he reproaches her due to some physical or mental shortcoming she has, or he has evil suspicions about her, or he does not want her in his bed, and so forth. All of that is also nushuz. And that can be, obviously, it contributes to the breakdown of the marriage. Wallahu musta'an. Similar is the case if he orders her to do an act of disobedience, or he orders her to do something unlawful or something which is prohibited for her. For example, I can recall once meeting, I was doing some dawah and doing some business ventures, and there was a woman, and I told her about Islam. I gave her some literature. She said, I'm a Muslim. I said, subhanAllah, because she didn't fit any stereotype or of what, for a Muslimah, she was a revert, but she didn't cover or anything. And so I was like, subhanAllah. She says, my husband is from such and such country, and, he doesn't want me to cover. He doesn't like that I cover. So here the husband, that's in the shoes from the husband, he orders her and does not want her to wear hijab. He wants her to mix with men and to be out there. And this husband, at the same time, she said, I go to the clubs and stuff with him in order to keep him in check because he's drinking so much and he's just, buck wild. He doesn't want me to pray. He doesn't want any of that. So this can be the case. This is a type of evil nushuz, which is a transgression of the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here we have the man who does not want his wife to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's actually ordering her to be disobedient to Allah azza wa jal. Wallahu musta'an. If she refuses to do such an act and he reprimands her, then the sin is upon him. Meaning he tells her, no, I don't want you wearing hijab. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends. No, I don't want you. You're always praying and stuff. We can pray later, or we can just make them up tomorrow. Why are we doing? We have guests, and I want to serve a little wine to my guests. Why are you not helping me? Why are you being so difficult with me? And she says, no, I'm not going to. I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to take off my hijab. I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to serve wine. I'm not going to do these muharramat. And then he abuses her more. The sin is on him, not on her. Very important to realize that. Nushuz also by action and its various manifestations. The nushuz could be by deed. For example, if he abandons having sexual intercourse with her, karamakumullah, without any legal excuse or practical reason for doing so, or he transgresses against her by beating her, reviling her, treating her with contempt. Also included would be his intentionally willingness to harm her. The following also would be considered acts of nushuz. He refuses to maintain her with respect to her food, drink, and clothing, and so forth. Also included would be his turning away from her due to some disease that she may have, his committing of akramakumullah, anal intercourse, or his boycotting her in the bed, and so forth. That is also nushuz, because that's disobedience, muharram, and he is forcing her into that which is a major sin. The husband may combine both types of nushuz and be guilty of committing both nushuz in speech and deed. So you can see how severe those acts, the physical nushuz, this discord can be, to where, as it was mentioned by the sheikh, going to the akramakumullah, the anal relations, anal penetration, physical beating, abusing the wife, doing these kind of things in a physical way. This is all a great evil, grave sins, and serious cases of nushuz, of this marital discord. Nushuz, of course, can be on the type of both spouses, as the sheikh mentioned, and he's going to give us some examples from when it's both mutual. A nushuz estrangement, aversion, division, evil treatment coming from both partners is a reason for distress, grief, and pain. It has unhealthy results and negative effects whose harms are not restricted to the couple themselves, but which extend to the family as a whole, the children, and all society. And as we said, a harmonious marriage is a part of that backbone for the harmonious community. And when there's a breakdown, especially when there are children involved, this has serious implications and effects upon the children. And some children being so intelligent that they can pick up, even at a young age, when there's that discord and that disharmony and that disunity, and when there's abuse, when there's spousal abuse, maybe there's fights always between the husband and wife, even if it's never physical, but they might argue all the time. This hurts the children. It affects the children and can have grave implications upon the children in the future and on how they see relationships. If they see that their father is abusive in speech, abusive physically, then this is the kind of this is what they can be accustomed to when they grow up, either in desiring this kind of relationship because they think it's normal, or being just affected and abused by that, or emulating and copying those things because this is the example they have. So it's normal for people to fight and throw pots and pans and smack each other and jump out the window, bust each other, throw hot pans of water on one another. Then this is a normal household to some people. Wallahu musta'an. And this has immense effect, especially upon children. And we won't even know until they grow up, if they're blessed to do so in that sense. So it's so important that nushuz to realize how it affects the family and the greater society. There are many instances which the nushuz is coming from both partners. These include when each of the spouses dislikes the other and does not wish to live with one another. So when it's a breakdown in the marriage, sometimes people hold on together only for their children, or only for their reputation in the community, or only for their reputation amongst the family and the families. But there is no love, there's no mercy. So then you've destroyed and undermined two of the important maqasid, or intents and things that we are trying to gain out of the marriage, and that is mawadda wa rahmah, as Allah mentions, the love and the mercy. That this is what you hope to have in a marriage. Sometimes there's a breakdown. Sometimes marriages, they last and they have love and possibly not much mercy, or they have mercy for one another but they have no love, and they last sometimes. But when there is no love and there's no mercy, you are in a recipe for total disaster and a breakdown that will probably manifest itself in some form or another. And how many times have we heard, which amazes me, people in their 60s, in their later stages of life, getting divorces. Why? Because there was a breakdown, and maybe there had been years of this kind of nushuz and something like this, or transgressions. But it's amazed me. I've come across many scenarios, Muslim families from Muslim countries and stuff like this. After, you guys are in your 60s and 70s now, and you're going to divorce and then remarry. What's going on, mom and dad? What happened? So these things happen, and often it can be an issue of the nushuz, because now there's disharmony between the spouses, and there's no love and there's no mercy. No love and no mercy. And this is a travesty for a marriage, when there's no love and there's no mercy. And he goes on to say, so that they do not wish to live with one another, but at the same time they still live with one another, maybe because of those external things that we mentioned. Sometimes the emotions that should exist between the couple have grown cold, and each spouse becomes distant from the other. Sometimes also each spouse transgresses against the other by beating them, reviling them, or treating them with contempt. Perhaps they make things difficult for each other and try to harm each other Each one is trying to be the boss over the other, and therefore they never listen to each other or consult each other in mutual manners. This book is fantastic. The Sheikh really hit it on the head, a lot of the issues regarding the shoes and the breakdown in families and in homes. Sometimes one's temperament is simply not cohesive to that of his or her partner. So there's a situation where there's just incompatibility in the temperament. Maybe he's high strung, maybe she's very laid back and soft spoken, or vice versa. Now, one of the things I want to mention, as the Sheikh was talking about, is they beat one another. Yes, there are women who are physically abusive towards their husband. They beat them. Some of the women are really wearing the pants in the home. Not only do they order and command their husband and tell him what he's going to do and what he's not going to do and where his money is going and how it's going to be spent, but some of them are even physically abusive towards the husband. And I've known countless scenarios, of course, especially when polygamy comes, when a husband takes a new wife, adds to his family and so forth. Some women, out of just a pure jealousy, they become physically abusive. So I've known many men, I've seen the results with the burns on their arms, and heard of the countless stories and so forth, and have seen that where the lack of being able to deal with that, and the jealousy and the anger and so forth, reaching to such a state that it is a physical abuse on the perspective of the wife, or she may lie, or she may call the police. Men having to jump out, religious men having to jump out the windows of their homes and apartments. Why? Because the wife is so upset when she finds out he has another wife, or whatever the case may be. So the point being, a habitifillah, is that physical abuse can be from both perspectives. The men and the women. Women can be physically abusive, or a woman driving a man to that level, because some women are they don't know how to express themselves except through violence. Likewise, the men, obviously, we know this. Most violence coming in marriages and so forth is from men, and probably violence in the world, if we were to look at statistics. But women also, because if a woman is coming from a broken home and a broken background where she had to be tough, where she had to fight, where she was being beaten up by relatives, by family, by brothers and sisters, by the streets, whatever the case may be, that's what she knows. She knows how to fight. She knows how to defend herself, and she can sometimes be even the aggressor and be abusive towards the husband. Sometimes you have scenarios where whoever's at fault initially is outside the scope, but you may have that a woman or a man only knows how to deal with things physically. So you may have a man that does not put his hands on women. He does not do that. That's not from his family. That's not from his tribal background. That's not what he does. That's not his culture, his habit. But then the woman comes from something different, and she is abusive, and she will try to drive him either to violence, or she will strike him. Punch, smash, cut. These are real scenarios. So this is also how you can see that in the shoes from both perspective, and it's the physical, meaning that women also can be physically abusive and be the instigators or the ones doing the domestic violence. Some husbands are beaten to a pulp. We've seen those types of scenario. Wallahu musta'an. The next section, and we'll probably end with this, is the causes of nushuz. The Sheikh begins to talk about some of the causes of nushuz, some of the reasons this is happening. He says, in the previous pages, it has been noted how Islam is concerned with the relationship between the spouses, how it sets for the spouses a path that they can follow that will protect their partnership and which will strengthen them, how this path will protect them from the violations of the sinners. and how Islam directs each of the spouses to protect the rights of the other and to support each other and to build a proper household that is built upon love, affection, and mercy. And as we said, mawadda wa rahma, love and mercy, or affection and mercy, perhaps. However, all of us know that our happiness for both men and women is fulfilled by following the commands of the Sharia that Allah has laid down for us. The man who is happy and prosperous in his married life is the one who is fulfilling the obligations that Allah has put upon his shoulders and seeks only his rights that Allah has granted him, meaning he doesn't go make tajawuz, he doesn't go beyond that. The happy and prosperous woman is the one who fulfills her obligations and fulfills her obligations to her husband. So that is what it should be, okay? However, sometimes one or both of the spouses do not follow that path laid down by the Sharia, and hence they stray from what they have been commanded. Now, also there can be other things. Sometimes people, they don't love one another or something like this, and they may not be abusive people, but they just find that, you and I in the future, maybe we don't have a future together, or whatever the case scenario. That is also kind of outside of our scope, because it's not necessarily the nushuz, but sometimes maybe people are alerted to the fact and they're both realize that perhaps that they are better off separated. There are those scenarios, and where it's not nushuz or disobedience. They are lured by inclination of life, and thereby they stray from the straight, proper path. Therefore, disputes creep up amongst the spouses that threaten the spousal relation with dissolution and destruction. They start having warnings of dangers that may destroy the union and serenity of the family. Because, of course, as we said, there should be the love. You want that spousal love, the mawadda wa rahma, and mercy, and you need that in your home. Because when a home is destroyed, like I said, the rest of life can be is affected. Sometimes people find their happiness at work or in other negative or sinful relations, and that is obviously not what the Shara calls you to, especially to sin. But rather, you need that. The marital bond is super important, and a lot of times I think we fail to realize that. Wallahu musta'an. The Sheikh goes on to say, he says, one can note that in this day and age, spousal problems are more common and widespread than in previous time. The disputes that arise between the spouses make the house they live in a permanent source of discomfort and unhappiness. In this way, they also threaten the well-being of the children who may be ruined in such a family setting. If one surveys the causes for such spousal discord, one will find that the causes are many. However, the Sheikh, he says that it can be summarized in four, basically. Summarized in four, meaning there could be others, but we could probably break them and group some of these things to four basic illnesses that are or things that are affecting the spousal relationship. He said, first, causes that can be traced back to the wife herself or her friends. And that's why we said, I think in the first lesson, we talked about the importance of knowing, for a husband to know who his wife's friends are. Not knowing their numbers and knowing their social media things, but rather to know who are the women, who are the associates of my wife. I need to make sure disease, disaster, chaos, destruction, turmoil is not being interjected in my marriage. I don't need cancerous people and individuals to infect my household. So that's why it's so important for the husband to be aware of who his wife or wives associate. Now, when a husband has more than one wife, he has 2, 3, or 4. He's got more responsibility because it's a much greater network to be responsible for. He needs to know. And I have a very close beloved brother to me, and I think he has 2 wives now. I don't think he has 3. I know he's had 3 before, but he has a unique scenario. And anyhow, he definitely relays to me exactly about those things, of how those negative, spoiled apples can try to come in the home and destroy and wreak havoc between his wives and between him. So it's so important. Good company and for the husband to know who his wife is associating with, because that's a big part of Islam. Husna suhbah, the good companionship. You don't want negativity. As the Prophet ﷺ said, al-mar'u ala deen khalilihi. A person is upon the religion of his companion. So you want to make sure your family, your wife, has good companionship. Likewise, even the men. However, some do not follow the path laid down. Warnings that they destroy the unity. So causes that can be traced back to the wife herself or her friends. Secondly, the second grouping the Sheikh has mentioned for these causes that can be traced back to the husband himself or his friends. So likewise, if the husband has bad friends, sinful, wicked sinners who call him, hey, man, I know, yeah, we prayed, but let's go to the club after this. Your wife is not going to worry. Don't worry about that. We'll tell her we're out playing bowling or something like this, playing video games. Don't worry about it, man. We're going to a lecture. Tell her anything. But we got to go to this club. Man, the jam is going tonight. It's going to be banging. Okay? So that's from the negative husband's friends. He could be a fairly religious guy, but he's got some negative, sinful friends who call him to sin. Third, causes that can be traced back to the woman's guardian or her close relatives. Fourth, causes that can be traced back to other factors. So the Sheikh is going to detail some of these scenarios now, which is very good and useful for us, because I think all of us, I mean, this book is fantastic. You're finding, I see it. We've seen so many countless scenarios, and this is in Islam and outside of Islam, that are, it's very applicable to the issues that face, and it should be a read. A book like this actually should be a read for people getting married and people that are married. People getting married and people that are married. SubhanAllah. So, causes that can be traced back to the wife, herself, or her friends. This category includes the following. The woman does not fulfill her obligations in her role of taking care of the household, and when she goes beyond what is in accord with her feminine nature. Women have gone out of their houses to work, and they have neglected their obligations with respect to the house, such as keeping it in good shape and arranged. She neglects her responsibility with respect to her own children and bringing them up properly. She neglects her responsibility with respect to her husband and does not tend to what is in his best interest and what are his needs, and she furthermore does not obey him. All of these aspects and more make the husband fed up with the wife and makes him have an aversion to the hated acts that his wife is doing. Psychologically, he will always be disturbed and filled with doubts and suspicions. In fact, this will make him always be thinking about how to get out of such a married life that is disturbing and unpleasant for him. So here you have a woman that the environment, she doesn't take care of her home. She doesn't, and she's always out. Okay. She may be working out of choice, not because she needs to, and not because the household, you need two incomes or something, but she just wants the freedom. She just wants to get out of the house. And on top of that, she neglects the duties of the husband. Feels, hey, I work. I'm not washing the dishes. I'm not going to cook. I'm not going to clean. I'm not even going to clean myself, or something like this. These are real scenarios. Or I'm not going to beautify myself. You want this, you better come and come to the bed or whatever. All of this, it affects the haqq of the husband. Second scenario, the shoe sometimes is exhibited by the wife when she does not carry the responsibilities of married life, when she is ignorant of her rights and responsibilities towards her partner in marriage. So ignorance is a big part of also causing a disastrous married life. When the husband and or the wife are ignorant of their responsibilities and duties, especially even with details. Some of the detailed things are very important. Third, sometimes before marriage, the woman has an imaginary fairy tale, very good, or romance novel perception of what married life is all about. This is very true for men and women. This perception is very distant from the realities of life. She expects married life to be one full of roses without realizing the responsibilities that a wife must perform in married life in order for her to have a prosperous marriage. This sad situation is partially because such young ladies are not brought up realizing and carrying out household and family responsibilities before marriage. So this is also a big scenario. And you can imagine, especially for those of us who reverted to Islam, who had all kind of different relationships prior to Islam, and then we have this picket fence built up, this image of a perfect marital life. And then when we don't see that in the first week, the first day, the first hour, people want divorce. I know countless divorces. I can remember countless divorces that happened before Fajr, married after Salat al-Asr maybe. By Fajr, they're divorced. The woman is calling for a khula. The beautiful walima, beautiful gathering of communities. Within 1 week, the husband is out and the marriage is over. So a lot of times this has to do with the lack of the knowledge, as we said, but also the imagery of this perfect picture book scenario, instead of dealing with the challenges of the reality of life and marital life and responsibilities of one another and working together, as a husband and wife. Some women like to be in power and control over their marriage and the affairs of their lives. She tries to enforce her will over her husband and his relatives. It is natural for the man to reject such control. In the end, this comes back to harm the wife as she ends up in failure and remorse. Another scenario, sometimes the shoes is the result of particular characteristics and qualities of the woman. For example, there are some women who like to pester their husbands, causing them grief and distress. Some turn their houses into living hells and have many arguments, quarrels, and feuds with and without reason. Some of them are essentially so dull and sluggish that it almost becomes completely impossible to deal with them properly, even if one is willing to do so. Another scenario, sometimes the cause of a woman's issues are her friends at work or who surround her. If they're from those who are evil companions and refuge is sought from Allah. She is inclined to follow their ways and behavior in a conscious manner, either intentionally or unintentionally. This occurs if the personality of the woman is one that lacks independence and mature thinking. She can easily be swayed without clear thinking to rebelliousness, disobedience, and showing discontent with her life. However pleasant and desirable her life may be. So some women will be never satisfied because of the negative influences they have. What, your husband didn't buy you new furniture this month? Every month, my husband buys furniture for us. Or, whatever the case may be. So there are some women, they have everything that is good, shar'an, and even to make a nice, simple, good household, but yet it's never enough. Why? Because other people are in their ear, other people are distracting her, and she is easily influenced by that negativity. Wa'iyadun billah. وَإِيَّاكُمْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. Causes that can be traced back to the husband himself or his friends. The husband himself may be the cause of the woman's disobedience and rebelliousness. For example, he may be very stingy and miserly. He may also be very emotional and excitable. He may also be someone who is very harsh, tough, and despotic. He may be one who forces his will and decisions upon his wife in every matter without consulting with her, taking into consideration her feelings, exchanging views on the matter, and being pleasant with his wife. He might consider his wife like some kind of a cattle, and therefore deals with her with coldness and coarseness without any compassion or gentleness. And we talked about this prior, that it's very important to have that gentleness and that kindness and that respect for both spouses. Everyone wants to be respected. And so the men have to be, strive their best to learn how to be kind and gentle, to learn to be, if you're not already a kind and gentle person by nature, then you need to exercise that. You need to learn that, because that is an important part of keeping a marriage together, and what many women need. And I say many because there may be some exceptions that are just perfectly happy, or at least they can deal with whatever types of scenarios. For them, there's a greater, some other purpose in staying in a marriage. The cause for that may also be his evil friends. Okay, and that goes back to what we talked about. And they encourage him to hate and dislike his wife. In fact, his extreme good nature beyond normal limits may also lead to his wife to change her disposition and make her try to overrule him and then disobey his commands and elevate herself above him. Meaning that some men, they're the opposite. Not that they're too gentle, but in a sense, we would describe it as being too soft. Like they're overly not fulfilling what our typical role of what we think a man is, that he's running things, that he's in control, So some men are the opposite. They are too soft. They are, they're not giving most women, they do respect kind of a man of authority and a man who has manhood. He's a man. Okay. But some women perhaps are different than that. But generally, this is the general sunnatullah. Okay. So if a man is overly, even to this extent of being a weak man, weak in the home and outside the home, then it's easy for a woman to maybe overcome her man, that she feels she has to take on that role and responsibility, and that can be the source of nushuz. He is actually, because of that, because he's not handling things. He's not being a man. He's not giving that, exhibiting some of that authority and some of that strength that she needs to feel protected and to respect. So if she loses respect for him, then she feels like she's got to toe the line. She's tolerating him in the marriage, and then the marriage is just kind of a disaster because she's running things. She has to wear the pants and the skirt. Wallahu musta'an. He may cause his wife different forms of harm, such as cursing her or her family, reviling her, verbally abusing her for the tiniest of reasons. So this is the one who's really harsh. He may insult her because of her family, if it is less prestigious or honorable than his, or another nushuz upon his part. He may try to bring harm to her by divorcing her, and then before the waiting period is finished, bring her back as his wife and then divorce her again. So some men weaponize divorce. Wallahu musta'an. All this is done without the intention of returning to a real married life, but simply to harm her and transgress her rights. Or he may avoid having sexual intercourse with her for no reason or legal sanction. This may lead the woman to lose her chastity and doing something forbidden. So when there's that nushuz on behalf of either spouse, but here the sheikh is talking about when the husband is being undutiful, when he is not giving her the rights, that can cause her to fall into other kinds of sins. Maybe she becomes a porn addict. Maybe she is into masturbation. Maybe she commits zina outside the home. This can happen and happens. Also, vice versa, the same thing. If the woman is denying the husband, then it's very much more likely and easier for men, due to their nature, to fall into sin than the women in those sins. And Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala knows best. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah stated, the harm that comes about to the woman by the man avoiding sexual intercourse with her is such that the marriage may be dissolved under every circumstance, regardless if it was intentional from the husband or unintentional, or if he had the ability to perform sexual intercourse or not. So it shows that that's a big right, because a man can marry more than one wife, but the woman, she is restrained to just her husband. So that's an important right of hers, is that she has a husband who's hopefully attracted to her and, responds to her and, gives her that haq, which is a human need and a human desire. Nushuz on the part of the husband includes when he orders her to do something forbidden or illegal, such as we mentioned. And we gave examples, taking drugs, going to the clubs, things like this. Also from the shoes on the part of the husband is his not fulfilling his marital obligations. For example, he makes life difficult for her with respect to her food, drink, clothing, and so forth, or he makes her live in a residence that is not something suitable for her. She is to live under a bridge with him. Well, this is all I can afford. If it's a legitimate thing, that's what he works and he strives and he's doing the best he can, then this is good. But if he is, we're trying to save money, so you're going to live in this rat hole with the rats. And yes, we know all the gang members are selling drugs right outside the door. You might get shot, but you should be thankful and be grateful because, hey, we're going to save some money eventually. Or I need to get another wife with the money. Or I need to, okay? So, it's very important to have, as a man, to look into the comfort of what his wife or wives can deal with, and there are men, for those in polygamous scenarios as well, or desiring that, you have to be careful. Also, one of the things, sometimes we have this, unfortunately, abuse in polygamous scenarios sometimes, where brothers, they put their wives in one place without their willingness to do so. So it's a difference between the wives that agree to that and the wisdom behind having two wives in one residence, and the one who says, no, that's what I got. I have this 1-bedroom apartment and we are all going to live in there. Okay. Or you're getting your welfare check. It should pay for this and that. And we're going to still live in one apartment or a 2-bedroom and do it like that. Okay. So that is a big problem that you can find, which is a source of tension, and it's a source of discord in the marriage, and also can cause some women to not just want divorce and stuff, but women to leave Islam. How many women were in polygamous scenarios because it may not have been practiced properly and with wisdom, that they actually left Islam. These are real scenarios. I know countless scenarios of disastrous scenarios like that. So it's very important to think about the comfort of your wife or wives, and to have a to be respectful and observing their needs and even their desires in that sense, and what's suitable for them, and where they feel safe. In addition, including among the acts of nushuz is his unfair distribution of his time, where he stays when he has multiple wives without legal justification. Okay, so he becomes lazy and careless. He enjoys time with one wife more than the other, and he shows that by neglecting the rights of the other wife. By, hey, I'm staying with her for several days. Yeah, whatever. You deal with it, okay? Or whatever the case may be. There's many scenarios like this. And so the important thing the Sheikh mentions here, without legal justification. So, when a man is in a polygamous relationship, which is khair azim, it's immensely good. It's immensely good. Don't listen to what people say about the negative. Absolutely. This is a beautiful part of Islam, dealing with the nature of men, and it's the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, it has to be done with rights and responsibilities and respect, and again, seeking that muwadda and that rahmah, that mercy and that kindness. And it's not an easy endeavor, because the nushuz can happen. That's an even more delicate scenario. If a man has more than one wife, 2 or 3 wives, and he has to balance the time, it can be easy for him to slip up and make mistakes in the rights of the women's time or spending or whatever the case may be. Likewise, nushuz on the part of the wives can easily, out of jealousy. Some wives, for the simplest thing, oh, I saw, the way you put your arm out towards her. Your legs were, the way you were sitting, you were facing her, you weren't facing me. And that can be a problem right there. That can turn into an explosion. Or you played with her at the beach and you were joking. You didn't joke with me. These are real scenarios. So it's so important to be, for the men and the women in those scenarios, to realize the balance, and especially it's for the men. This is where the manhood comes in, that a man has to beware of nushuz, beware of this marital discord that's going to break and disrupt his family ties. And also he has to squash fitna, so he has to put out multitude of fires, and he has to do it with hikmah and wisdom. And one thing I will say is a very important thing for people in polygamous situations as men, is that if Allah favors you with the means, that makes it easier. So it's much more difficult in many scenarios for a poor man to be polygamous, even if everything is taken care of, because women need the extra. They need the extra. They need the gifts. They need the gentleness on the heart, the extra flowers, extra gold if you got it. Whatever the case may be, to gently smooth the heart. And those kind of scenarios are a thing of wisdom. That is a thing that only comes from wisdom, experience, and ilm, and tapping into the experience of those people who have done it and who have successful marriages, or at least have had successful marriages. Wallahu musta'an. So very important, ahabatifillah, to be very careful about those that balance, that delicate balance, especially in a polygamous scenario. So the Sheikh, he goes and says, or he may not fulfill the needs of his wife and children such that their well-being is not met, or he does things that hurt and dishonor his wife and show lack of respect for her, such as backbiting her, slandering her, joking about her, or he may be desirous of her wealth and forces her to spend it on his behalf. Some husbands, they want the wife to spend on him and his other wives. Some husbands, they this is a very disastrous thing. They will backbite, never mention anything but niceness, but not going over bounds when it comes to wives. If you have 2 wives, 3 wives, always say a word of good, not going too far, and never backbiting and belittling one of your other wives to another wife. Never giving her ammo, never encouraging that, because that encourages discord, and it is also destructive to the family, and it is sinful. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, it is sinful. So be careful slandering her or joking about her, joking about one of your other wives. So all of these contribute to nushuz from the part of the husband. Also, the Shaykh goes on to mention, akramakumullah, having anal intercourse with her, which is forbidden and is never permissible. His traveling for fun, amusement, and entertainment without taking her permission, as he is thereby wasting ample wealth for a useless purpose, while that wealth is meant to sustain the rights of his household. Wallahu musta'an. If the man apostates from Islam and refuge is sought in Allah, this is considered nushuz. And we've known this too. How many women, multitude of kids. I've seen it in Saudi Arabia. Brothers that were once brothers, and they left Islam, has like 6 kids. So now his wife is stuck. She's still a Muslim. His kids are Muslim. He's left Islam. What do you do now? So these are real scenarios. That is obviously nushuz, azim, on the part of the husband. Wallahu musta'an. And the marriage contract is dissolved unless he returns to Islam. There are many cases or acts of nushuz that we have not mentioned here in order not to overly lengthen the discussion. So that was fantastic, what the Sheikh was saying, and it's actually longer than I thought, but I think it's super important and beneficial. We'll stop there for now. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Bless us with ikhlas, with tabat, ala sunnat nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Bless our marriages. Bless our future marriages. Bless the Muslim communities and families. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. See if there's any questions, especially pertinent, relevant to our discussion. As-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is saying astaghfirullah a condition of Toba? So a condition, excuse me, from the conditions of Toba that we've mentioned is that you have the determination not to go back to the sin, and that you feel sorrow. So saying istighfar is showing that sorrow, that you feel sorrow in your heart and you're uttering it on your tongue. So in that respect, you might say, I mean, I can't imagine Toba without it. So it's not necessarily usually mentioned exactly like that, but that's what it is. If you are feeling sorrow and you're not going back to the sin, you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're seeking his forgiveness and his pardon. So I don't know why, you make istighfar. Just make istighfar. Talk to me, but I don't respond until I get waswas that if I respond means I'm deliberately delaying Toba. I don't really understand what you're saying there. It's confusing to me. Just say istighfar, get rid of the waswas, okay, by seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and respond to people. Just respond to people. Simple. Bi-idhnillah ta'ala. I don't know what else to say about that. It's not exactly how to get married to a Salafi lady nowadays. Well, just like any women, going through the proper ways of trying to find. If you are tied into a community, if you find a family or a woman that you are interested in, then you can ask for her, ask for her hand in marriage, ask for her walis, her walis contact, her guardian's contact. So it's just like any other women that you want to be, people have to know who you are and know something of your reputation to trust you with their daughters, with their sisters, with their sisters in their community. So a lot of times this comes by being tied into a community. This also helps, obviously, for people to get married and find suitable spouses. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. Also, obviously, there's the path, which is very common now, and that's the internet. And so you have to be very careful to not fall into sin and to do things properly by seeking out a guardian and not being alone in chat scenarios, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. Zalman or no men of the marriage, and Allah knows best. Can you please give us a tip on how to have patience in this dunya, remaining single and treading the path of this journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? A tip on how to have patience throughout this dunya, remaining single. I think, that's going to depend upon the person's scenario. And what I mean is, there are people who want to be single, or they are forced to be single. But since you alluded to being patient and single, that means that you have a desire to marry. So when a person has a desire to marry, they should look at the Sharia-based means to try to find a suitable spouse. So one of the things I would say as a part of that patience is not accepting being single, but that striving to rectify that. To rectify so you can have the companionship, so you can have the joy, so you can have the children, you can have the things that are going to help you be stronger in your deen wa dunya. In your deen wa dunya. So, from the perspective of a woman that wants to get married, she needs to make it known. She needs to make it known to if she has a Muslim father, to her father, or a community that she's tied into, because this is the problem when everyone is just, not really tied into going to a masjid, going to a community, no one knows them, then it makes it much more difficult. So it's very important that she ties in, and that she has a wali, she has a guardian that can maybe help her locate a suitable spouse. Also, the path, as we said, the internet, through proper marital sites, and going through the proper adab, the proper manners. So I say is not accepting single. Don't accept being single in that sense. It may be the case. So of course you don't want to go to haram, but striving to rectify that, by taking the various means to finding a spouse. And yes, one of the things I would say, because there are a lot of women that want to they want to refuse polygamy, that if a woman either finds it, that she should never write that off the table unless she feels that she totally knows she is not a person who can accept that. But if she has also a disposition, she has children, she's getting up in age, whatever the case may be, she's been divorced many times or whatever, then she should not disregard or discard that option if it's a righteous suitor that she is interested in, or that so never writing that off for the goals that you're trying to achieve. One of the things also I would say for the men and the women is also know what you're looking for. Don't just say, I want a good spouse, I want a righteous spouse. Know what you actually, have an idea of what you're actually looking for. What is going to actually make you, that you believe is going to make you content and happy. That this is a person of religion, maybe a person that you're attracted to. You have certain things in which you, certain goals or certain aspirations. Don't just fall into marriages, fall into this marriage, fall into that marriage. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll go with that. I got nothing else to do. I'll get married. If it works, it works. Because there are some people that have been so damaged through divorce and so forth that they just accept any kind of scenario and have no desire to really make it work. So you don't want to be in a situation like that. So it's important to see kind of the head of where the potential spouse is, what they're looking for, are they in it to win it, and what you're looking for, and trying to make those matchups. Marriage is a very, obviously, a serious duty and so forth, and a serious undertaking and endeavor, and it's not easy to find suitable spouses. But I think having goals of what you want, targeting, and hopefully not so stringent. He's to be a millionaire. He has to take me to Dubai and I have to live there. He has to buy me an apartment in Riyadh, or near the Haram, or something like this. Things that are maybe unrealistic, possibly realistic, but for some, but still you want to be within reason and having some goals. And that's what I would advise to the women. Likewise for the men as well, is similar in that you go through those channels, but people have to know who you are. If people don't know, and you could be a wife beater and you come to somebody's daughter, for somebody's daughter or whatever, you're not tied into the community, you're not known, because that can happen whether you're known or not. But people need to have a background. They want to trust who they're entrusting their baby girl with, or baby girls. So it's very important to be tied into a community. People need to know you, know something. Try those avenues. Yes, you can try the internet as well, observing that adab. But I say, not when I say about accepting patience in these issues, that a person should be striving. Because if you want to marry, and most of us want to be in a happy relationship, it's super important Islamically that, as we know, the scholars mention when they talk about the concept of tawakkul ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawakkul ala Allah, i'timad ala Allah wa fi'l asbab. It is relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making efforts to attain. So if I want a good job, if I want to be wealthy, I can't sit right here in my thing and just read books. I'm going to have to make efforts to get my money right, to increase my wealth, to get a business, sitting with people who are business minded. I'm going to have to make efforts. Likewise, you want to get married? If I want to marry, I can't sit in here and just say, well, I'm just going to drink my coffee. Maybe a beautiful, righteous woman will come in and say, yes, I'm ready to accept polygamy and I'm ready to come in your life and I'm wealthy and I'm happy. No, it doesn't happen that way. Yes, you have to raise your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you have to beg your Lord tabarak wa ta'ala for what you want, what you desire, and you have to make the effort. I'timad ala Allah wa fi'l asbab. It is making the effort and putting your trust and your heart, those results, with Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, so may Allah make it easy for all of our brothers and sisters who are struggling and want to get married, that they find the righteous from one another that will be pleasing to them in their eyes and in their speech and in their spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. To my dears, give us a tip. Okay, the path of journey. Okay. The book that I'm reading it's called Marital Discord and the Shoes. It's a fantastic book by Dr. Saleh ibn Ghanem Asadlan, one of the mashayikh in Riyadh. And I'm not sure if Sheikh Sidlan, I know there's Sidlan and Sadlan, I believe, or Sadlan. One of them passed, and I'm not sure if it's the Sheikh. I'm gonna have to look that up. But it's a fantastic book in English, old school, very excellent book. Naam, very excellent. Let's see. How do you resolve bad, aggressive actions of jealousy from your wife in polygamy? We have to realize one thing, that women, as a natural disposition, they're going to want, there's going to be jealousy, okay? But it's when the jealousy makes the tajawuz, when it goes beyond the bounds. And one of the things that is important, and as Sheikh Muhammad Al-Aqil, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, one of our mashayikh in Medina, he mentioned to us, and he mentioned about one of our elder mashayikh that has 2 wives. And even Sheikh Muhammad has 2 wives. A lot of those mashayikh, I can think of a lot of my mashayikh, they have multiple wives. Okay, so the Sheikh mentioned about one of the mashayikh that when he has an issue, one of his wives is angry with him, he can diffuse that by simply going and kissing her forehead. So don't underestimate the importance of being kind, affectionate, and if you have the ability, like I said, a gift. If someone's in a polygamous marriage, I don't advise trying to be in polygamy and being poor and being broke, unless there are circumstances, meaning the woman is independent, she doesn't need the nafaka, okay, and she agrees to not be spent upon, or limited spending, or something like this, whatever the case scenario. Because when you have more money, things can go easy, there's less stress. But if you're stressed, you have to worry about 2 rents, and you're stressed about it, and you're worried about this, and this one, her light's going to go off, and this one, she needs new clothes, this one's pregnant, this one, this, that adds more of those external pressures to a situation which is already potentially volatile, that could be difficult. So the smooth operator who is blessed with a little bit of money, that they can help, they can ease that. They can be like, no, I'm not worried about it. Our rents have been paid. All rents are paid. Oh, this one is having a little bit different. She's being unreasonable. He can notice that. And he can say, I'm going to give her a little, just something, just to, I know she loves flowers. I know she loves this. I've got enough paper. I'm gonna go ahead and get this little ring. He can do that. That is a ni'mah from the ni'amillah. Most of us aren't like that, but excuse me. But my point is that when you have a little bit more to spend, it makes it easier. But when there's stress from the beginning, that contributes to those scenarios. So if you're able to, and you're in that polygamous situation like that, give a gift. And even if it's a simple gift, show her that you appreciate her. Show her, no, listen, I'm not, baby, you got to use that. You got to talk to her in a language that is going to make her feel good and comfort her. Show her. And this, you will gain the respect. A lot of times you'll gain, maybe you're not going to win in all such scenarios, but sometimes you will find, and you'll find wives will say, you know what made polygamy, even though it didn't work for you and that other wife, the fact that I saw that you were making a serious effort to comfort us both, to never cause jealousy, to do this, to do that. You were on point. And that right there, you gain her respect, or you can gain the respect of both wives. So you need to be able to navigate that. And another piece of wisdom, one elder told me, and he said, one thing to navigate in a polygamous scenario is a lot of times the initial blow, the women in their jealousy, is it will pass. You will see. But you have to ride that storm. You cannot rush and give her divorce or khula or whatever. Unless if you're harming her, then that's different. But a lot of times it takes time, and you'll be surprised, because usually a righteous woman, she'll eventually come around and say, I want our family to stay together. I'm not in love with the fact that you have another wife, but please, let's respect certain boundaries and rules. I don't want to be in the same house with her. I don't want to be in the same neighborhood as her, or, whatever the case may be. And some women are the opposite. They want to be close by because they want to see the husband more. They want to be, close by. And some women just don't want fitna. They're on, I don't have any problem with polygamy. I just don't want fitna. I don't want a woman who's aggressive towards me and going beyond the bounds. So please keep that in check. So a man has a leadership role in a polygamous scenario in order to navigate that. You got to remember that you are not the woman and being feminine. You are going to, no matter how stressed, how you're ready to pull your hair out and pull your beard out, you have to still maintain things and run things with kindness and gentle and respect, not by being soft and stressing and just, oh, woe is me, and giving up. Because if they see the captain of the ship is sinking and destroyed, well, then the ship's going to go down. So you have to learn how to navigate that. That's about as general as I can be with those kind of scenarios. Okay, let's see what happens. So there's a lot of things there now. How do you measure a potential spouse's religion? One girl I am considering struggles and doesn't seek knowledge, but she grew up as a Hafiz in Saudi and seems sincere. Religiosity, is she praying? Does she encourage good? It doesn't matter that she memorized necessarily. The salat is very important. Does she pray? Asking her questions about Iman, will she be an obedient wife and go along with your religiosity and help complement you? Or will she be a test? You can kind of find out, is she materialistic? That can be a great determiner, because I'm not trying to diss anyone, but especially in the Arab countries in general, the Khalij specifically, Saudi, Kuwait, a lot of the women, many of the women are affected by consumerism for a variety of reasons. It's very much, let me give you an example of what is very typical. If you go to a Starbucks, whatever, some sort of coffee shop, women will go there in groups, taking Instagram pictures of their cakes and their coffees, and literally take 3 sips. And when I talk to my students about those things, and this is regular, this isn't, I just can't say, I saw this once. I'm talking about not hundreds, but lots of times I've seen this my own self. Okay. They will take a few sips. They've taken their cakes, they put it on the Instagram. And when I talk to my students about this, they say, yeah, Ustad, basically, kind of the trend is, and I've talked to others who are in the women's circle, obviously, there, that it's a part of the trend to, not show that you're poor. You're not poor, that you're needy. So you take a few sips, maybe your coffee, it's wrinkled on top because you got a latte that has the design on it. Maybe the design's only a little messed up. You took a couple sips, but you don't really need, you took one bite. It's fashionable to be wasteful. It's become to that extent. So that is something you need to be aware of. Find out where her head is. If you're marrying from a place where it's known certain customs, certain habits are the case, find out where the potential spouse's head is in regards to this materialism. And can you live that kind of lifestyle? If that's what you want a wife who's keeping up with the Joneses and the Muhammads and the Fatimas, and you got it like that, well, okay. But if you don't, and I've known brothers too, married, second wife, she's so beautiful, she's this, boom, it's divorce very quickly. This woman wants to spend all my money. I'm working, I have 2 families, I'm providing for her. She doesn't want that. She wants a new this. She wants to go out to eat every day. Real scenarios. So you have to be very conscious. You need to find out where her head is as far as, the religiosity. What's compatible? What are you looking for? Don't expect that you're going to have a talibat al-ilm. You need to go to Yemen for that, but, or Somalia, go to those places, and Ethiopia and stuff like this, and Indonesia. But you can find it in Saudi and those places, but it's just a different caliber of lifestyle and what the people are bombarded and what they're accustomed to. So you need to find out kind of where her head is, what she is trying to do. And, it's not an easy process, but you just have to strive and make lots of dua that Allah shows you the signs. If she's not going to be religious like that, to where it can, cause you pain and that consumerism, now. Let's see. Yeah, and is she going to be a loving, caring? Look at how her household is also. To find out the goodness of a religion. Does she come from a truly religious household? Not just that the father could be a talib al-ilm or a sheikh or what have you, but maybe the wife, what's being raised, the wife was always in the marketplace. She was always doing this. And so the daughters now have those traits. So you want to have an idea. That's what you're going to look. Marriage is a test. Everything is a test. Now, as someone said, I'm done with tests. You're not done with tests unless you're done with life. So may Allah guide us in you and forgive us in you. Tests are a way to distinguish the good and the bad. And the worthiness, especially when it comes to marriage, it is way far. The test of marriage, especially if you find a good spouse, a good husband or a good wife, far outweighs the difficulties. When you have a righteous person, and there's so many ayat and things that there may be, you might dislike something, وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكَ, and it is better for you. Meaning, you may have, as a man, you may have a wife, she's not as beautiful as you would like, or whatever, or you've grown apart, whatever. There are certain things there. But she is righteous, and she was never the person to abandon the prayer. She's the person who will remind you to get up in the depths of the night. Or she even sits and you do durus together. Or she, raises righteous children to the best of ability. So there's all kind of shortcomings that can find. Or the husband. He has such as a shortcoming. He's not that handsome. He's obese. He's whatever. But he is serious about his prayer. He's serious about the deen. He keeps that deen going in my household. And he has such and such positive trait, even though it's shortcomings in here. So he may be much better. And that test that you deal with him in that area, the good far outweighs that test. So never ever, especially when it comes to marriage, because what choice do you have? I can't imagine why a Muslim woman, and I know there's lots of sisters there, getting older or whatever, and they still, no, I don't accept polygamy. No, I don't do this. No. They give you a list of no's. You got to have this. You got to have this business. Well, okay, you're going to be single, and I bet a lot of you are not necessarily sustaining that with the lawful. Why? Because it's so hard to be single and be unhalal. And for years and years and years, you need to get tucked in, as we said. You need to get married. You can't play with that. And the benefit outweighs the good, the harm in many scenarios if you're really looking. But if you put this imaginary thing, there are sisters, and this happens in Jahiliyyah, meaning outside of Islam as well. You have women. They have 77 kids. And they want, no, I don't accept polygamy. No, I don't accept this. He's got to be a 6-figure guy. He's got to be this tall. He's got to be athletic. He's got to be Mr. Olympian. And she has 77 kids. She's as big as my office. Okay. And I'm not disregarding anybody and belittling, but I'm just saying you have to look at yourself and look at your reality too. What are you attracting? You want this, you want a doctor, and you haven't finished high school. And I'm not belittling education, but I'm trying to give you the tasawwur, to give you this image that to be realistic, to be and look for what's going to be better for you and build you, because life is short. Who wants to stay in this dunya alone? I couldn't do it. I'm real with myself. If I couldn't do it. I'd have to. I can't. No. So you have to be real. What's going to be? Some people can be patient, and that's beautiful. But now, may Allah help us and guide us and forgive us. I mean, most women are controlling. Blah blah blah. Da, 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 da. You're right. I was married to a feminist. Didn't say last time. All the abuse I got was deterrent from my mental health. Can we not get married because one has ADHD? Can we not get married? So I think a better question would be, if someone has ADHD, can they get married? Of course they can. And it's going to depend upon the severity of the situation. And it's going to be very important that the partner, that everyone is aware of that challenge prior to marriage. So that's what I can say about that. If a person doesn't want to get married because they have ADHD, then I guess, then inshallah ta'ala, maybe there's no harm in that, and they have no desire. But if they have a desire, then they should probably make it known, and maybe they can find a husband that is willing to be in that scenario. And this is for the woman, and vice versa for a man in that situation as well. And Allah knows best. A lot of comment. We should look in before, during, after marriage. What is this? What should we look into before, during, and after marriage, which will cause compatibility or will cause us to not be compatible with potential spouses, irrespective of where they are from globally? What should we look into? That you can't say. You have to look at what you are. Who are you? And your compatibility. That's when it comes to determine what's compatible. So that compatibility is going to be that you two people have unique things that you like or share, and that's how you make what's compatible. So that's what I say. I don't really know, as far as looking for particular criteria, that's impossible, because everyone is unique and everyone has different things that they enjoy and can discuss and what have you, different levels of intelligence, different culture, different all kind of things. If a woman has children from a previous marriage and the ex-husband gets jealous because she's newly married and keeps the children, what should be done? Hopefully that they can find some sort of reconciliation. If not, and the husband has custody, because that's going to depend on legal custody issues or what have you, that people should, you're going to have to, people will have to work that out through the court system, probably, as far as custody issues. Would you recommend getting married at 18 whilst not having studied the deen properly? The funny thing is I was thinking about this earlier, that in general, it seems people are less mature as the ages, 18-year-olds aren't like 18-year-olds 20 years ago or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, and the responsibilities, life, cultures, societies change. And it's rarer to find mature and established and mentally, spiritually, established adults, even in the mid-20s. So I can't say, oh, you're 18 and your scenario's like this. That's going to be between you and your parents, or you and what you think about yourself. But in general, a lot of 18-year-olds know to get married, and then we already see the rates of divorce. And an 18-year-old, especially a man, they say that the brain is only as maturing and still developing as a brain, I think, in the mid-20s. So you see this. So the average 18-year-old that I know, and have been they are not anywhere near that. So I would say it's probably better to establish. They don't have to be a talib al-ilm and stuff, but to know some basics about their deen and the rights of marriage. And, as an 18-year-old, how much are you working even? A lot of 18-year-olds, unfortunately, don't even have work ethics and experience. When I was 16, I was driving. My parents forced me to drive at 16. And so I was working already, had income coming in and learned that. So a lot of people, they don't teach these ethics. And they might be in the mid-20s, a lot of guys, and they're living at home, no responsibility, not working sometimes, this and that and the other. What kind of marriage and how mature and ready for marriage are they? So those are things to consider. So, of course, I'm not saying halal, haram, but I'm saying as an advice, in general, at that age, the common thing, 18-year-olds, are they even finished with high school? That's usually the senior in high school, I believe, 18, 19, depending on when they start. So, a lot of times they're not ready for that responsibility, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. So that's what I would say in general for the 18-year-old male. Now, I think Andreas Martin is going to become a Muslim. Because Andreas Martin is listening to the devil instead of listening to the beauty of Islam. Andreas, if you know that there's only one God worthy of worship, wouldn't you therefore worship that God? Or do you choose to worship who God created? Like Jesus. We love Jesus as Muslims. We follow the way of Jesus, but we follow more specifically Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May peace and blessings be upon them all. But for you to worship other than the creator, well, you're the one who worships the devil, because instead of worshiping the creator of the heavens and earth, you have been allowed to been deceived from fulfilling your duty and goals. Now, is it permissible to climb trees for fun? Why would you ask something like that? It's permissible to do that which is permissible. Meaning, why would a tree have anything, what would be haram about that? So the asl of all these activities is mubah. The asl, the origin of doing whatever, is that it's permissible, unless there's evidence to show it's haram. So we have no evidence to show that climbing a tree is haram, with ropes, without ropes, with bungee cords, without bungee cords, okay? But doing things that are going to be a severe danger to your life without any benefit, that would be a question to explore. But in general, yeah. No, understand. If a wali asks if I've had a previous relationships in my jahiliyyah, would you recommend saying something vague which hides my sins, or should be honest? So if that question is asked, then a person can either say, I don't feel comfortable answering that, or can answer that and say that, prior to Islam, or whatever the case may be, or, not prior to Islam, but, when I wasn't practicing, I've made Toba from previous actions and have been distanced away from that. So you could deal with it in that way if that scenario comes up. Now, and we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam.